Hey guys, it's Gary Wong with GaryWongRealty.com again. Today, here I am with my guest and friend, Bai Jiang. He's a local real estate investor as well as a mortgage broker and the founder of the largest Lower Mainland real estate investor focused meetup group called Earning Passive Income Through Real Estate. So today we're going to talk about how the property transfer tax policy changes in the past couple of weeks has affected the Vancouver real estate market. I want to get a mortgage perspective on that. Do you think you could give me some feedback and a perspective on how that policy has affected the market?
First of all, thanks for inviting me to this presentation. I think it's a good discussion to have given all the issues that we have had with regards to affordability within the Vancouver housing market. So the property transfer tax was implemented during the last week of July with not a lot of grace period before it was put into effect August 2nd. The property transfer tax applies to residential properties. So basically it's a surcharge of 15% for foreign home buyers on top of the existing property transfer tax. So if you're looking at a purchase of about $3 million, then you're going to be looking at about $450,000 as the property transfer tax. And that needs to be paid upon completion of the purchase itself. So that's a pretty significant amount of money that foreign home buyers have to pay in addition to their existing down payment. Now, this property transfer tax only applies to Metro Vancouver. So basically the boundaries go all the way up to Maple Ridge. So if you're looking at Abbotsford or Chilliwack, it does not apply even though it's within the Lower Mainland area. And also this only applies to residential properties. So commercial properties does not apply. Other countries have actually implemented similar taxes with regards to curbing foreign home buyers purchasing properties within their countries, such as UK, Australia, Singapore, Hong Kong, as well as China. They have various restrictions in place. As an example, UK has up to a 28% capital gain tax for foreign home purchases, as well as in Hong Kong, where unaffordability, we think like Vancouver is about 7 to 8 times the average income. Hong Kong, it's 20 times that.
Wow.
So it's significantly more unaffordable, and they actually put pretty significant tax in terms of discouraging individuals from buying properties and flipping it within a very short period of time. They actually are required to not flip it within 3 years' time. Otherwise, you have to pay this tax. So a lot of different policies that have been implemented in other countries, and it just got to the point where this was something that the government felt it needed to put controls with regards to the housing prices. There's actually been a legal precedent in terms of having citizens or foreign home buyers wanting to go against the government for this type of tax. In France, back in 2012 timeframe, they proposed a 33.5% capital gains tax for foreign home buyers, and the foreign home buyers, they pushed back and they actually felt that this was not constitutional. So they brought it to courts, and it got reduced to 19%. And so individuals, home buyers, they can challenge the Charter of Freedom and Rights to try and make negotiations around it.
I think some people are already challenging them.
They are. It'll be interesting to see what type of effect that's going to have. Governments can actually challenge the Canadian government, like the Chinese government can push back as well if they wanted to. I personally don't think that's going to be the case because China is already trying to curb capital outflow. So if they were to work with the government, a Canadian government, to try and make this easier for lessen the property transfer tax, then it would go against what they're trying to do already. So I don't see, at least from a Chinese government perspective, them doing anything with regards to that. Okay, so with regards to the immediate impact on the real estate market, there's been at least 400 plus transactions that's been reported as being impacted by this this change, according to the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. And that total is about approximately 400 plus million, because the average foreign buyer is purchasing about $1 million worth of property. But the breakdown isn't clear in terms of that 400 plus properties, because we don't know what that ripple effect will look like, because if Joe is selling the property to a foreign buyer and then Joe needs that money to purchase the next property, being local, we don't know what that ripple effect is going to look like. Long-term impact on the market, I don't think it's going to be that significant, mainly because the housing prices is still driven by supply and demand. There's a huge demand and just not enough supply of product available, especially when you look at detached homes where the land itself is worth quite a lot. And if you look at over the next 25 years, Greater Vancouver is expected to have another 1 million people come in as a population to the area. And that's a pretty significant number, and that's why there's a lot of push within Vancouver to densify within the major transit areas, SkyTrains. You see a lot of development around the Marine Gateway, the Oak Ridge area, Brentwood. Metrotown's developing a lot, and that's already pushing out to further east as affordability issue is really requiring individuals that can afford Vancouver to go further out into the suburbs. So they're pushing out to the Fraser Valley, Maple Ridge areas. Those are values have increased significantly over the past year or two. Also, with regards to our dollar, it's around 75, 77 cents. Because the dollar is so low, Canadian economy is very resource driven. So it's our low oil prices affecting lower Canadian dollar, which means it's still a 30% discount relative to other places. So if an individual who's a foreign buyer wants to put their money for investment purposes, and they just have a choice, say, between US and Canada, the dollar for them is going much further along in Canada. So even a 15% tax is really, they're going to be further ahead.
Yeah.
And Vancouver is such a high demand in terms of just people want to live here. It's a great livable city. Nowhere can you, around the world, can you be on the beach and during the day, and then 30 minutes to an hour later, you're up in the mountains skiing or hiking, whatever it may be. So Vancouver has been top 3 cities to live in around the world for quite a long time. Yeah. So you're going to, with all the uncertainty around the world that's taking place, people are going to continue to invest here as well as to immigrate to Canada, and Vancouver is one of the top destinations. So there's a loophole around all this in terms of what's driving up like immigration into Canada. Quebec has an immigrant investor program, and that applicants actually have a net worth of $1.6 million, and you have to invest $800,000 over the next 5 years into Quebec. And the thing around it is that they are not required to actually settle in Quebec. So they can settle in Vancouver or anywhere else around the country. And that's driving the number of buyers into Vancouver, driving up the prices. So when you look at in 2015, that program itself, there's over 5,000 applicants and family members that were admitted. And that's a 40% increase compared to 2014. Now the numbers are higher compared to historical numbers, mainly because there was a bit of backlog in the past. So they're kind of just catching up, so maybe seeing higher numbers right now. And there's also, according to Citizen and Immigration Canada, some of the stats, during the first quarter of this year, just under 300 principal applicants were admitted into Canada under the investor program. So that's outside of Quebec's program. And if you project that for until the rest of the year, that's looking like just under about 1,200 applicants and their families moving over. And according to 2014 stats, there was federal evaluation, about 2/3 of those individuals will actually settle into BC, which equates to another 700 plus homes that are being sold in 2016. So Vancouver is still very top of mind in terms of a place to relocate to. So money will continue to find its way into Vancouver. Even before all the changes were being proposed, a lot of money was actually already flowing into commercial real estate. Back in Q1 of this year, there was about 660 transactions compared to 524 last year's timeframe. And the dollar volume has increased significantly. Last year was about $1.6 billion that was spent. And now the first quarter was about $2.9 billion. So a lot of the money was already moving to commercial real estate. And as mentioned previously, the property transfer tax does not apply to commercial properties. So there's different ways in which a foreign buyer can invest their money into the Vancouver area. They can put it into Chilliwack, Abbotsford area that's outside of the scope of Metro Vancouver. And the typical Chinese portfolio is approximately 50% in terms of real estate. So the money will continue to find its way regardless of whether it's going into the outskirts of Metro Vancouver or Victoria, Nanaimo, and other parts of the country. The ripple effect has taken place just because the average home price in Vancouver is so high that individuals that can't afford that same price can actually still go further east, and transportation has improved to the point where through the twinning of Port Mann, greater access is available, and long-term Vancouver is still a very solid pick in terms of investing.
So I'm going to talk about the real estate aspect in terms of people have been asking me, oh, how is it affecting the market? Is it making Vancouver much more affordable? No, unfortunately, it's not making it much more affordable. Some people had maybe the misconception that the market was going to be cheaper by 15% or 20% or 30%, and then people thought there was a correction, the media headlines started blasting out there. But in my perspective, the market is slower because it's not spring, it's definitely summer. Summer is definitely historically a slower time of the year. Having the implementation of the policy has definitely further slowed down the market. Has it slowed it down another 15%? I don't really think so. Have we seen indications of slowdown? Yes, we have. Especially in the first week or two of implementation, there was a lot of frenzy, a lot of hesitation. They're going to tank the market, and a lot of people were hesitant to buy or sell. But then as time went by, people have their lives to live. People need to upsize, downsize. People get divorced and then they need to sell. People die and then they have to sell the house and estates and all that stuff. So like Bai mentioned earlier, demand and supply, there's just not enough supply out there. So with the increase in policy, actually our company has talked about it in the news, saying that some of the developers that we have connections with have hesitated to buy land to develop multifamily. So in that sense, it's actually hindering some developers from developing land and creating supply. So is it actually hurting local buyers? Somewhat. For example, a foreign buyer, we have actual cases where a foreign buyer has purchased a local homeowner's home, deposit, and it's firm sale. And then the local homeowner then goes out and buys their home. But then the foreign buyer finds out about this policy and decides to walk on the deal. The local homeowner then might have to default on their purchase, and then they might get stuck with two properties, two mortgages. Like there's a lot of things going on, nothing's set in stone right now. There are a lot of negotiations back and forth, but there are lawsuits coming from some individuals. And then the interesting thing is on the news, they talk about this policy has violated NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, affecting the Americans and the Mexicans. Well, the interesting thing is that under the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Americans and Mexicans can actually pay the 15% tax and then file to the tribunal, and then they can get that 15% reimbursed to them through the federal government. So if they pay the 15% to the provincial government, but they get reimbursed by the federal government, it's only a matter of time before the federal government comes in and steps in and says, no more, right? Some people say, oh, has there been no effect? No, that's not true as well. There is maybe a couple percent in terms of pricing. I had a case where I was supposed to get 3 offers on my listing, but I ended up getting 1 listing. But in the end, I still sold the property, and I sold it for pretty much within market value. Not as high as we anticipated, but still within a few percent, 1 or 2%. So I don't really see a long-term effect damage. I do feel that it is a mistake to make it retroactive. It is a bit unjust, as many people have said it out there, where it's just pulling the carpet under someone's feet and no warning, and it does discourage or hinder foreign companies and foreign investors from wanting to invest in British Columbia, because policies like this, if they keep getting implemented without notice, and it would discourage foreign investment, definitely. What do you think, Bai?
I agree with your points. I mean, it leaves a very bad taste in the mouths of our foreign investors, and they are knowing what will be implemented once they make the purchase. And there was, if you look at the transactions that were leading up to August 2nd, the Land Titles Office had like record highs on Thursday and the Friday before the long weekend in terms of number of closings that took place. Their systems were heavily overloaded based on just the need to try and save 15%. So
yeah, I heard notaries and lawyers were charging $10,000 just to. So it wasn't necessarily benefiting the public in terms of affordability.
Yeah.
Maybe gave some lawyers some early bonuses.
Technically, when you look at that 15%, from a mortgage perspective, when you look at that 15%, that closing cost needs to have a history. So if somebody needed to come up with $300,000, all of a sudden, like to close right away, and that history was not shown as proof, then technically it hasn't met all the lender's conditions. So I don't know to what extent the lenders went back and re-verified everything, especially on a tight timeline to get everything done and closed off.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So if you have any further questions for me or Bai, please feel free to contact us. Our contact information is down below. Once again, thanks for watching. Subscribe, comment below. Until next time, God bless you. Thanks guys for watching my video. Please subscribe and share with your friends. Email me if you have any more questions. Thank you.